Welcome everybody to our new schedule as previewed previously. So what we're doing, Alex, is we're switching the timing on the rapid and the classical. So classical will be on the weekend, and maybe I don't need these. Classical will be on the weekend, and rapid will be on Friday evening. So it's just a switch in time slots, basically. The time controls for the moment are the same, although we might occasionally run a blitz tournament somewhere in here. But we're going to do the 15+5 tournament that used to generally be Sunday morning. We're going to do it Friday evening. And the normal time slot for the classical is going to be Saturday morning. Did we pick 8 or 9 a.m. Pacific for it, the start? I think 8 a.m. Pacific. So it'd be from 8 a.m. Pacific on Saturday to 8 a.m. Pacific on Sunday. Another component of that is we're encouraging folks who are in the classical round robins or the Dojo Classical Open that if they want to schedule their games Saturday morning between 8 a.m. and noon Pacific-ish, then they can send Kostya or myself a link, and we will potentially do commentary on those games. So Kostya and I are going to trade off these the classical commentary slot on the weekends because I can't do every weekend, and Kostya has become more keen to do some of them. So we're gonna trade those off. And many participants in both tournaments have been saying for some time that swapping the times of the two time controls would make sense. I've been in agreement for quite a while. It just took us a little while to all get on the same page and make the decision. Exactly, no best for the jury. The general commentary slot for classical is going to be 8 a.m. to noon Pacific. And, depending on Kostya or my stuff, it might be half an hour earlier or later, but that's kind of the idea. We'll do 3 to 4 hours of commentary somewhere in that range. I cannot stream a Lee chess game. No, not allowed to at the moment. As long as we're chess.com partners. What else is there to this announcement? That's pretty much the scope of the changes. I still intend to be here Friday evenings. We might try to do, chess.com can be used for any dojo games that you want to. We might have an occasional blitz tournament on Saturday night. That might be another way to fit in a blitz tournament without canceling any of our other programming. So, yeah. All right, let's see how we're looking here. We got Valkyrie in the tournament today. Excellent. Could it conflict? Potentially. It's at the same time, no best for the jury. I don't know whether the plan is to keep those or not, the Lee chess tournament at the same time. Let me send this link here to folks on YouTube. Those have stopped? Okay. Yeah, I don't think we need two classical arenas at the same time-ish on the weekend. So I'm not personally aware of why we would keep running the Lichess one, but if people want us to, I mean, I don't have anything against. Don't have anything against running those tournaments. Lim Kim, if you can hear me, you've joined the wrong section at the moment. So here are the links again. So hopefully you can find the correct one. The first arena link is the under 1200 group, players under 1200 rapid on chess.com. The second link is for players from 12 to 1600, and the third link is for those over 1600. So hopefully everybody can find the correct section for their rating. I think I answered your questions. Yeah, crunchy. No best for the jury. You'd prefer a classical arena on a weekday. Okay. I hear you. If other people give me the same feedback, I'll tabulate it. But right now, we do believe that there's way more potential participants on the weekend than on a weekday. So all right. I should announce it on Twitter and stuff. Hey, Be Conquered. Right, some people only have time to play classical once in a week because classical is, a big time commitment, and you want to play classical as many days as you can in a week. That's awesome. That's awesome. I'm just tweeting, folks. Don't mind me for a second here. Okay. Tweeting done. Hey, cute kitty cat. You mean like BCS, like Berkeley Chess School? Let's see. Pooh Bear. And on behalf of everybody, we thank Pooh Bear for creating these tournaments for us. It was his first time doing it, and he's called this tournament the Friday Rapid 1600 Plus Arena. So just a little excited. Thank you very much, Scotty, for doing that, for setting that up for us. We still have many people in the wrong sections, but it looks like you did mark the rating sections clearly. This tournament is called Rapid 1600 Plus, so it's for players over 1600. Meanwhile, we've got another section here, which is clearly marked as under 1200, which would be the correct section for players rated under 1200. Whoops. Why did that happen? Okay. Perfect chess school. Super cool. I have made the arenas for a couple years, no best for the dreary. And now I've got Scotty to help me out. So I'm very excited for it. And it will translate into, 5 extra minutes of commentary here or there. So hopefully that's all for the best for all of us. Is there anywhere we posted the change? No, I didn't know where to post something so folks would see it, so I just announce it and announce it and announce it. It'll be figured out pretty soon. I will also say this: there's no classical arena this in between weekend. Because Kostya is covering the U.S. Championships this weekend. The U.S. Championships conclude next Friday, and so our first classical commentary on the new weekend time slot will be next Saturday, October 25th. There's no classical arena this weekend because of the U.S. Championships. All right. Well, we do need some players in the under 1200 arena, even if you all think that you're 1600 plus. We need some of you to join the under 1200 arena so that there are games for the other under 1200s. There's got to be somebody under 1200 who's truly under 1200. Oh, Scotty did set up a classical arena for tomorrow. Great. Well, I suppose it's fine. We can leave it there, but we won't be able to do commentary because Kostya will be doing the U.S. Championships. So, anyway, it's there if people want to play. It's there. Yeah. Exactly, Bonghead. Exactly. Let's see how our 12 to 1600 group is developing. Do they have enough opponents for a little tournament? Just missing one. Okay, not bad. Not bad. We need one more player between 12 and 1600 to kick that tournament off. Yeah, we'll probably be okay. We got about 10 minutes to recruit somebody. Maybe while we're sitting here, we could grab a game from today's U.S. Championships. And just look at it for a moment. Let's grab this game here. Grab the PGN. I know tonight is really for analyzing, games of players somewhere between 300 and 2,300, not super GMs, but I don't know. We're sitting here. We might as well look at something. I don't want to spend 20 minutes just telling people to join a tournament. So this is a game from today's U.S. Championship between Sam Sevian and Andy Woodward. Very classic variation of the English opening. F6, got to defend that pawn. I'd be tempted to play D4 now for Sevian. It looks like the point of his opening, but instead he does something weird. Dreaming of something better. What is that knight doing? So clearly he's not satisfied with D4, E4. Somehow that's not working for him. So, oh, sorry. What did Bob Dole tell me? will gladly HP Bobdole, but if you do try to send a link, you're going to get moo-botted. So maybe you can send the link to me in a whisper or something, then I can post it for you. So something weird. Then he plays e4, so the pawn can't push past, and now he wants to trade with d4 next. And he responds with some little tactics around the d4 knight, but white achieves the strategic goal here. I guess if white moves the queen up, then castle's queenside is awkward for the knight. So the knight goes here, which is a little bit awkward for the bishop and the pawn, and the knight itself doesn't want to go back there. Huh. Doesn't go for the queen trade, which makes sense. Because white's got the extra center pawn, so they'd rather be in the middle game. Looking to harass the queen side. Black can just block it. Ambitious of white. And he just hanging out, playing high-class moves here, staying in the game. Oh, and now they fight. Holy moly. Boom. F4 might be a mistake. It allowed that option. This was the worst place piece for black, as B. Concord pointed out. And undefending the queen. And undefending the queen allows this knight d5 move, which gets this terrible piece into the game, which feels really good for black. Oh, wow. Tactics. If queen f4 be pawn takes knight, so takes with the knight, leaving the queen here. Knight c6, hitting lots of things. Oh, the battle is on. Kavutskiy. That saves the rook from d8. Now the queen just... Oh my god! Queen e4! Well, that's a blow for Sam. Oh, no. That's the kind of move he could have overlooked. The idea is, you know, bishop takes queen, knight h3, check, knight f2. And then if knight b4, the knight on f2 escapes by capturing the bishop on e4. Or if king takes the knight on f2, pawn takes c6, keeping 2 extra pawns. Oh my god. Then he just grabs that one. Check Alino, and pawn takes knight. Staying up a pawn. Staying up a pawn, preparing bishop d5. Trying to make it even more brutal. This game's not going to last many more moves. Yeah, you can resign that. Oh my god. Oh my goodness. That was just a beatdown out of the blue, wasn't it? That kind of stuff happens a lot in Rapid, right? Like you can just miss some kind of tactical move for the opponent, right? Something like knight c6 by surprise. This whole sequence has several unpredictable moves, like knight d5 seemingly crushing white, but after queen f2, it's not so obvious what you do with these pieces. Takes here, gets hit by this. Boom! Oh! Oh! I hadn't seen this game yet today. Oh my god. And he's really showing up now. Oh my gosh. Oh my goodness. Wow. Okay, Talons Flamed is looking to get into the tournament. Talons Flamed, that play command only works on Twitch, so you're going to have to follow this club link here. This is the Chess Dojo Club on chess.com, and then you'll see the 3 upcoming events. I will note that the Friday Rapid under 1200, that means players rated below 1200 chess.com Rapid. You should click on that join button. Friday Rapid 1200 to 1600 Arena, that means players rated between 1200, 1201, 1202, up to 1600, they should play in that group. And Friday Rapids 1600 plus, that's for players over 1600. Over 1600. And that section currently has 2 players under 1600. So they should consider going to the proper sections, because the other sections are going to get canceled because they don't even have enough players in them. Falgry was saying it was lonely in the under 1200. He needs a couple opponents to have some games in a tournament here. 3 minutes left to join the tournaments. So, folks, if you're thinking of playing, do. You cannot set a rating limit for Arena's B-Bong Head. We rely on the reading ability and direction following ability of our dear dojoers, fellow dojoers, colleagues, etc. Hey, D Darklight. Welcome. You're not alone, Novest. Not alone. Bonsoir, it is. Yeah. As people get more used to the new schedule, it may be easier to find the right players for each section. But today, it's maybe a little mess. Me is the illiterate, yeah. I mean, I'm not trusting them, Elise. I'm just hoping. I don't really have any better tools, so just hoping. Time is very different in the French opening than in other openings. That's for sure. So if there's anyone out there who wants to play rated under 1600, chess.com, please hurry into those tournaments so they don't get canceled. We've got these 3 tournaments here. I think Fabi is the clear favorite at the U.S. Championships this year, Elise. Yeah, just a minute or 2 to go here to get into the tournaments. The current standings in the U.S. Championships, we can look at that. I think Wesley So might be in first place at the moment. Along with Fabi and Hans. Fabi and Hans and Wesley, all with +2. Levon with +1. Oh, despite that heroic win today, Andy Woodward's actually on -1, so he's not like winning the tournament or anything. Okay. Time for the games, folks. My pre-tournament pick for the women's would definitely have been Carissa Elise, but I don't think she had a great start, so I might have to update that prediction at some point. Scott, if you're there, can you update the MooBot command to direct everybody to the one arena that didn't get canceled so we can all play in one arena today? And I will just get into commentary on the one section that did go. Bishop b4 check. White's trying to take over the center very quickly here with an early d4, looking to eliminate black's center pawn. Black responds with a check, but the move c3 sort of just bolsters white's central control while threatening the bishop, so the bishop has to retreat. And these quick bishop b4 checks can often go awry. I did not see Hans's funny bishop grab moment, Tomas. No, I didn't see it. Okay, so Jedi Goat finds a way to drop the bishop back that was attacked and defend e5, because I guess black had another problem. If the bishop went somewhere quelconque, white could take on e5 and just win that pawn. So when white played d4, this move was exerting pressure against black's pawn. Instead of capturing or defending the pawn or some other counterattacking move around these pawns in the center, like maybe weird knight f6, black tried to just check the white king and planned to deal with this next move. But after white plays c3, there's no time to deal with it, right? Because we have to deal with the bishop and later deal with the pawn. So black finds this move to keep the pawn alive, but it's an awkward position for the bishop because you see it generates kind of like a traffic backup here with bringing out these pieces. White chose to grab space with the pawn without losing any time because the knight's got to move. So it's reasonable. Like me personally, I like that the black pieces look like they're kind of stuck awkwardly defending this pawn. So I would first look for a way to just develop a piece before I looked at grabbing this space. But grabbing the space makes sense anyway. Even if not the first thing I would go for. Black challenges white's big space. I would expect c4. From somebody who played d5, I would expect them to want to just grab all that space. But instead they move the knight, presumably towards better pastures, but I don't know that it defends the center sufficiently. And there goes that center pawn. Woo. Yeah, since you mentioned this, no best for the dreary. You're saying white should try to open up the position given the lead in development. But white doesn't have an amazing lead in development yet, right? They're potentially going to get ahead because this bishop is blocked by this pawn, is blocked by this bishop. But at the moment, black has an extra piece out compared to white. So it's not the time to rip the position open with trades like this, because actually black's development is still as good or better than white's. And by releasing the tension and that bishop from d6, right, we actually give black the chance to further their development pretty rapidly. So I think it's in white's interest to keep this bishop on d6, it being kind of a bad piece. Look for healthy development moves we can play in the meantime, whether that be bishop c4 or knight d2 or, I don't know, maybe bishop g5 or bishop e3. And keep the option of trading in case we get well ahead in development. Then at some point we will be more likely to want to trade than to grab space. White grabbed the space, but then, as you'll see, they don't back it up. They don't defend it. And they just leave both of those pawns hanging to black's knights. Now white tries to tangle up the black pieces that are barely defended in the middle of the board. Black plays b6, white goes for the trade. And this bishop g5 move was not successfully defended by black. Even though they thought about it for a while, they just couldn't find a way to save these pieces, right? Unfortunate. Yeah, sometimes you work hard on a problem and you can't find the answer to it, you know? And then at some point you have to make a move, even if you haven't found the answer. So, yeah, moves that could have saved the piece for black. One would be to move this bishop most anywhere. Because in general, if you move this bishop, then against bishop takes knight, you can play knight takes bishop, saving the knight. And there won't be a bishop hanging on this file. So bishop e7, bishop c7, even bishop f8 are moves that wouldn't lose a piece. There's also this idea of queen c7 defending the same bishop and pawn as suggested by b conquered. And that again would allow you to recapture with the knight and your bishop is already safe. In the game, what happened is black didn't find one of these answers, and white just goes ahead and makes the trade, and suddenly black's faced with the fact that if they take with the queen, the knight is left hanging. If they recapture while saving that knight, then they leave the bishop hanging. Right? So white is probably going up a piece. Yep, they capture the piece. Knight e4, black tries to make up ground and just drops something more. Black wasn't sure what to do next because they can't castle. That's what drove them to knight e4. But in fact, knight e4 is again leaving lots of pieces hanging. So, yeah, I mean, it's hard to give black a great advice in this position, right? Because they've just lost a piece and they're struggling to figure out how to castle their king or organize the rest of their pieces. But probably the best bet is to try to safeguard the king by offering a queen trade, even though you're down a piece. It's probably the best option. But this move, knight e4, leaves more things hanging. Oh! Comeback for black. You see, Lim Kim is playing very, very quickly, right? Faster than 5 seconds per move since they're building up more and more time. So Jedi Goat should remain, brave or encouraged throughout the game. There's always a chance that you're going to come back when your opponent's playing that quickly. It doesn't matter if you're in an endgame down material. You want to always keep your hopes up against an opponent who's playing too fast. White found the check to save one rook and then save the second rook. So the game goes on. Knight f2 didn't fully get the comeback, but it probably gave Jedi Goat that hope, right? That, they're blundering stuff, right? They're playing really fast. This time they had a lucky way out, but they won't always have a lucky way out, right? It's a pawn, as Novestor the Dreary says, and it's a good sign. Two big things. Knight check. Bishop a6, setting up potential tactics in both directions, right? This could be a losing move or a winning move. Good response from white in rook e3. In hindsight, maybe you should be happy to just get one pawn, right? Rather than getting so fancy. Mainly because the fancy has its own risk, right? When white moves this rook, now if you move your knight, you might lose your bishop. So it's a tough spot here for Jedi Goat. They need a good move to stay in this game here. They really do. This next move has to be quite strong or tricky or excuse me, bamboozling or something, right? It's really got to be a strong one. But that moment before to just take a pawn on b2, very simple move, but we can't neglect that black's making some very positive steps towards a comeback here. We're playing an endgame down a knight, but won one pawn back, won a second pawn back. That means now black has two pawns against a knight. That's not an obvious advantage for white. It's not easy to work with. Additionally, knight b2 has split up these two pawns, so now each of those is weaker than before. So this endgame is, the difficulty level for white has gone up, skyrocketed the last 3 or 4 moves. And black can, feel some hope from that. They don't actually need the super fancy tricky move here unless they've really checked it. And I don't think that they did. So now they go for knight c5 with the idea of bishop takes bishop, knight takes bishop. White, of course, has already played immediately in response. Let's see what white finds. They find knight c5, which is the winning move, and knight d7 check. Wow. That cost black the second piece. There was no way out of this. This bishop a6 move got black into this mess. No matter what they do, white was going to win another piece here after this move. Best I can see. This was a good move to try because white might take here and then you can save the knight with your recapture. But white found knight c5 at this speed, right? And then if you take back the knight, white gets the bishop. And if you trade the bishop, white doesn't recapture, allowing pawn takes knight. White plays this check first, devastating, forcing the king to move, and then white recaptures. And now white's got 2 extra knights, so that just got really bad for black. Going for back rank checkmate with the rooks. Getting out of the way of the back rank mate. Trying to seal that king in. Pure evil intentions from Lim Kim. That's really rough for black. Hard to keep the checkmate at bay. Oh yeah, white did find the tactics. You know, whether they calculated it all or had like a good instinct and played the right moves without seeing it all, but white did find the right moves despite playing at this blazing pace. F6, trying to make space for the king, but this knight's still covering F7. And white just instantly delivers the mate. So...
You know what? I said no. Go to bed. No, can you do toys? What are you supposed to do? What are we supposed to be doing right now?
yeah.
Daddy's work.
Tough bitter pill for Jedi Goat there. But a really useful lesson, I think, on this move, Bishop A6. You know, like hoping for something even better, but underestimating the danger that the knight and even the bishop are in, right? You've got a rook that's trapped. You've got no other developed pieces. You're trying for a comeback, but white actually has slightly better development than you, and then you leave your pieces on these really advanced squares in the opponent's side of the board, like skirmishing, right? Black's effectively trying to win a tactical battle with knight and bishop against 2 knights, rook, king, some pawns, right? So it's just, it was actually implausible. Despite the desire for a comeback, that was unlikely to be it. And black should be playing more carefully. Despite being the person who's behind, you sometimes have to play carefully if you're in a position where you're less developed or less aggressively placed or less well coordinated. You know what I mean? Even though you're feeling the pressure to make a comeback, sometimes the start of the comeback is to be careful and not lose any more material. It's not to win back material from your opponent, right? It's to keep what you have so far, complete your development, clean up your position, right? And then try and draw out the game, get to a position where your pieces can actually make threats and create dangers for your opponent. But here, black wanted that comeback too soon. It just was not plausible. All right, let's hop over to another game. We're going to check out Tom's playing against Jedi Goat. Okay, let's see what the opening was. A Sicilian, risky one from Tomasz. Yeah, e6 and g6 this early do not go well together if white's able to play d4. You have to prevent d4 from white if you want to play such fancy moves, because now white opens up the d file towards d6, and your bishop is stretched between all its jobs of defending the dark squares. I'm not showing the board? What happened to my board? Ah, jeez. OBS being crazy. Display capture. Location capture. It just won't repair itself. I was trying to, have it resolve itself in an easy way, but it was not willing to. All right, so here's the position, and it's going to start off really badly here for Tom's because white opening up the D file, as I was saying, makes this square weak and accessible. If you move your bishop this way, there's knight b5, and it just comes into d6, and you're busted. But if you leave your bishop here, defending this square, then why did you move your g-pawn, and what are you doing with all these weaknesses? So, you can only do this when you've got the D file closed, basically. Black needs to have, control over D4 to play the E6 and G6 line. Oh, white missed knight B5. Instead tries to block out the bishop with pawns. And now at least they're going to land a knight on d6. They may have lost a piece, which is not ideal, but at least they found the d6 square, which is pretty good. Okay, and Tom's is thinking pretty seriously about this situation. Queen d5 is the move. Protecting the knight on d4, which could become exposed otherwise. What other moves could black have considered here? Maybe queen c7? Maybe queen b6? If white goes for bishop c4, black's going to actually greedily just go grab another pawn. Makes it a little hard to suggest what white should do, doesn't it? Ay, what to do? I mean, from a certain perspective, even though we've lost a piece, there could be some hope, right? Because black's pieces are not, a lot of them are not yet very well coordinated. Like almost all these pieces have some problems. I guess knight e7's okay. So maybe c4 to try and kick the queen off of g2. Allow us to develop more. Maybe bishop d3. Developing with the idea of queen g2, bishop here. Does that blunder anything? It has a high chance that I'm blundering something. Very risky looking. Knight c2, queen c2, knight f3, bishop f3. Yeah, this looks reasonable. Well, of course, black's fine. They're up a piece, but we're actually managing to develop a little bit here for white like this. I think this is about as good as I can suggest for white here. King f8. Let's see what white comes up with. Bishop e3 going after the knight. Fair. Knight retreats. Yeah, it looks like white's going to be forced to make some trades now. It's a good defensive move from black. Knight to f5. Knight on d6 is offered with a trade. Bishop on e3 is threatened. Queen on d1. Queen trade, and yeah, Tom's has escaped the risks and dangers of this opening and is now up a piece with some easy trades coming their way. So we'll check another game. Oh man, look at this. Siberian Tiger versus Chess Name. Two masters at play here today. And both kings lacking pawn cover. So it's dramatic. White has just played rook h4 as the last move, looking to win this pawn. White was not tempted last move by queen g4 check, rook g7, losing white's queen, right? So they brought the rook. King h8. The king hides behind this, preparing maybe to bring the rook here. Now, for white to decide, do you take on g4 by rook or queen? Or do you keep pushing these pass pawns? Or do you lift this rook? No easy or obvious moves, basically, at any point this game. Rook e2 could be an improving move, looking to put the rook on g2 or h2 at some point, and also just getting off a dark square. King g2 played. Being conquered thought maybe bishop f4. I guess rook takes rook check would be white's answer. Rook g8 defending that pawn. White goes on the h file. Doubles. And now white could take on g4, I guess. Because any version of black trying to trade off and win your queen, you'd be saved by rook takes bishop check. The rook on g7 will always block the defense of that bishop, and white will then also save their queen, right? So queen f8 played, and white is thinking here. It looks like rook g4 should probably be safe. I don't know that it's the only move. The other move that's somewhat tempting to me might be like f6, preparing to bring the knight to f5. That could be powerful as well. Okay, white goes for f6. Quickly rook g6 from black, because black is basically playing this game without much time here. Queen f4 was a funny move. Let me see that. Queen f4 takes mates. Wow. No vest for the jury asked about knight e6, which is plausible, right? The move would be queen f5. Rook h6. I'm not sure what happens then. It's possible. Certainly possible. Okay, game f6. Rook there. White's thinking. They've got to make use of their extra time by thinking and finding some really tough moves. Don't get excited about Black's 2 minutes. You know, just keep playing really nice moves. Rook G4. That looks pretty clean and simple. Trading that rook, leaving these unmoored pieces for Black to defend. White seems well in the driver's seat here with this approach. Strong play, I would say, by the Siberian Tiger throughout this phase here. Probably winning for White. Probably winning for White. Because White's already cleaned up one extra pawn. These pawns are pretty strongly placed, and this knight can come to f5 at some point and look pretty strong there. So, Canadian getting cooked. Yeah, it can happen. Trade. Chess name under 2 minutes. But my instinct is, even with 10 minutes, Black wouldn't really find anything on the chessboard to put White in much danger here. Offers an endgame. White agrees and goes knight f5. One has to wonder if e6 would be even more winning, or, you know, just bringing the king. But White seems pretty confident, plays that move quickly. And now White has e6, e7. I mean, looks pretty straightforward. Black throws in the towel. All right, good game for White from the phase that we saw, right? That was a pretty clean part of the game for White. We got British Capital Games up against AC Secret. And this opening looks rather dubious for Black. We've got the early e6 and g6 in the Queen's Gambit. It feels like White's center is really not too hard to support and defend. So a bit of a free hand, a bit of a free center here. It's a mix of the Grunfeld and the semi-Tarrasch. Black's kind of playing both at the same time. Great move from British Capital Games. I've been analyzing some Grunfeld positions with the computer engine recently, and in a lot of these positions, once the center's stable, instead of playing bishop e2 and castles, the computer just plays h4, h5. And the king sits on e1 for a while, maybe eventually moves to f1 or f2. So you keep it safe by keeping the option of sort of tucking it in this direction, but not by hurrying to castle. So h4, that's going to be a powerful move, most likely here. Defensive options for Black, mainly h5 at this point. Black doesn't have enough oomph in the center for a move like c5 or e5 to distract White from h5. So I think Black has to play h5 themselves to slow White's attack. Okay, just counters the center, so allows h5. Black's planning to trade on d4, play knight c6, rook d8, right? Trade here, here. Trying to put too much pressure on d4, so White has to make central concessions. The thing is, like, while Black's doing that, White's already got the h file open. So White is doing stuff, and very, very quickly. Oh, hey, MC. Haven't seen you in a while. What you been up to? How's your life? e5. To me, the move e5 says White's thinking about bishop f6, but maybe I'm reading too much into it. I like reading things into moves, which means occasionally I probably read too much into them. The move could have just been to reduce the pressure on d4. Excuse me. I mean, the basic move for white, the alternative to this would have been h5, as Novest for the jury says, right? The basic move for white here was h5. Idea to, trade and maybe play bishop h6 and just attack. Very, very basic idea. Black's not threatening to take on d4 yet. You could always play e5 next move, right? So it's not clear why white does this, but there's some extra options. Like after h5 takes knight c6 from black. If white plays e5, black's intended follow-up could be queen b4, which wasn't available before knight c6. Now you get a queen trade, and then you sort of don't get checkmated. So, whereas if you play e5 first, and black moves, and then you go h5, then you don't have this issue with knight c6, queen b4. All right. Good night, Alex. Have a great weekend. See you around next time. Now we get h5 from British Capital Games and a trade on d4. White's wondering if they have to recapture. I would say probably, but it's fine to wonder. So, yeah, to me, this is very much the simple move. There it comes, knight c6. Now I could go here or here, make the trade already. Play rook d1, sort of over protection, keeping the center defended. All right. Ooh, using a new piece to overprotect the d4 pawn kind of indirectly. And black just challenges it and says, hey, you're going to have some problems after this trade. So now white really has to go for mate. Really has to go for it after giving up that bishop. Black's got queen e4, among other ideas. Something on the c file. The bishop's bad for now. It's going to be amazing at some point here. It's got a future in any position eventually. So moves are, like rook h4, bishop f6. In theory, something like queen f4, but it doesn't seem amazing. I've just seen that kind of move before in these positions, so I know it exists. Queen f4, queen c3 check is not the order white wants. Okay, we've got one suggestion of going to this file. Rook here. How's this? I was thinking check here, 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 here. didn't see a really clear follow-up for white after this, right? Maybe white's got time for rook h4. They thought a while, and they go for bishop f6. Ay, ay, ay. The most killer move if it works. The most killer move. White could play this other line I showed positionally. Like right here, you could just say I've got a positional advantage on the dark squares. Queen e3. Takes, takes. And then, I mean, black doesn't have to take, but you've got h6 coming. If they ever take, then you get this pawn here and this knight here. That looks like pretty much a winning positional advantage right there in the endgame, enough to win. So that would be very challenging for black if white played queen e3. Let's see in the game. Black hasn't played yet. That's very prudent of AAC, given that white spent a lot of time on bishop f6. You want to sort of quote-unquote respect the time your opponent put into it and their thought by, you know, really thinking like, what are they up to? What can I do about it? All right, goes for the check. Queen e3 or king f1. How bloodthirsty are we here? Very bloodthirsty. Uh-oh. What's the plan there? But that position's just about winning, isn't it, MC? After queen e3. I mean, there's two candidate moves, you know, and if one of them's winning, there's no reason a 2100 might not go for it. If black doesn't trade on f6, it's not as clear. I agree. But this would be a more natural move, maybe, right, to not give this knight as good a square. But then, I mean, it's close. It's a big advantage for white. There's this move. There's h6. All right, here's the line that we had first looked at, and black goes after the f6 pawn. If they can capture it and then defend the king with their queen for a bit, I don't know. There's a risk element for white now in that you could be down a pawn. These pieces are still a long way from the game. But, you know, how to make use of that is tricky. Okay. White makes the trade. If h takes g6, then queen h6 wins the game. If f g6, Queen h6, rook f7, knight e5 or g5 might win an exchange. This is pretty good. Knight g5 doesn't get mated, does it? Because there's still the pawn on f6. So black can't checkmate just yet, yeah? White has just enough time to win that exchange. All right. They're playing all the moves we anticipated. Honestly, just winning, I think this position might be harder to play for white than the queen e3 endgame. Basically, you've got a rook against a bishop and a pawn, and if this bishop can get to d5, it's a very technically challenging position, I think. So I don't know if it's just winning. It might be technically winning for a really, really strong player. But I just won this endgame as black in a blitz game 2 days ago. So I guess white doesn't have to trade queens. They could just keep playing for checkmating attack against the black king, huh? Yeah, it doesn't have to be an endgame. Okay. There should be ways to win it. Hey, gefilte fish. See how they play it. So we're going to get knight g5. Takes on f6 by rook. Holy moly. Challenges white to deliver the mate. Incredibly brave move. Or desperate move from AC Secret. Wait, how hard is it to deliver mate? It's just queen h8, rook at h7, right? This isn't really a challenge. What's the challenge? It's just paint by number mate. After king here, there's even queen takes f6 if we can't find queen d8 and whatever follow-up. Yeah, this is not going to happen for black. Either too much hope chess or too much desperation, but this was the position we were all wondering about. Queen f6, white doesn't have time for knight h7 because of queen f2, so it's probably time for white to take the extra exchange. And then maybe white can go for a win by getting a rook here, huh? Like rook h3 to f3. Or maybe even rook c1. No, we can't go to c7 because of this. So that's not going to prevent bishop to d7. I think maybe just bringing the rook up might make a lot of sense. There's some little bit of skill left in this position. I do believe it's winning, but not time for that level of desperation that we just saw. Okay. None of this is happening. Sorry, folks. It's just the game went this way. Rook b1, queen b1 would be hilarious. But queen b6 or d6 followed by rook c7 looks like a murderous hunt for the king is afoot. Yeah. Oof. So bishop g5 to f6. That was well played by British Capital Games. I've been watching them play for a couple months now. Very strong player. Capital Games. They have some real high-level chess ideas that they're deploying. So yeah, they took nice. They played something really instructive there against AC in the game. Right here, you can see, first of all, H4, typical idea for these positions with the king in the middle of the board. Nicely done. And then E5, and going with that pawn. Even giving up the light squares turned out to be quite good enough with the idea of going, boom, straight for the dark squares. And a clean little calculation there. So nice one. Let's check out something more. Oh wow, this king's in danger. There's folks knocking inside his doorway. What's going on here? Black's got a rook against a bishop, but the important factor is White's king being kind of weak. So it's a complicated position, though. Cool. All right, rook against bishop with the white king exposed. That means Black's better in the endgame and the middle game, huh? Could have done all that without bishop b5. Most likely MC. Most likely. Or maybe thrown in the move rook to d1 first to overprotect the d pawn and then go for it. Could have been a simpler way, possibly, to play that position, because the knight on c6 wasn't in position to defend the kingside dark squares. It wasn't on d7. You know, you're not playing bishop b5 takes knight to keep the knight from defending f6. So, you know, with the rook on a8 and bishop on c8 a little slow to come out, White could have played an overprotection move like rook d1 probably. And then when Black plays, you know, bishop d7 or whatever slow move, then bishop f6, etc. Same kingside kind of stuff. Probably, I mean, to my eyes, a decisive positional advantage for White in that position. And so there's probably more than one clean way, actually, to push that. All right, so we see both players trying to improve their knights. Black gets this one off the back rank, which looks very good. And then White says, up, watch out. You got this, you got this, you got this. And the knight looked good on e5, but now it's more threatening here. Normally I'd want to play queen d5 for Black. That's my sort of desire move, right? Going after the white king. You can see, even if chess.com doesn't draw the arrow, you can see which way I'm thinking. But White does have this move, right? Oh, Black played queen d5, and White played queen b4. And now if you come here, there's knight b6. You got to be quite careful. And if you come here, there's queen b6 to a6. So what did Tom get themselves into here? Yeah, we're seeing all games with g6 and e6 so far today, MC. Oddly. MC, are you teaching chess or are you teaching other things these days? King c7. The king goes strolling, hoping for safety. Oh, it's hard to get to safety. There's already this diagonal taken. This knight can hop back to e5 at some point, taking the light squares to go with it. Do you get a chance to play any tournaments yourself? Or is it just teaching? Like, I'm seeing ideas like queen b6, king here, knight e5, king here, and then you see how the bishop and the knight are building a cage around that king. It looks really bad. But somehow the queen is stopping checkmate for the moment. Maybe rook c1. Just, why not bring out a new piece? Okay, let me get back to the game. Queen b6, king c8. Okay. So now white probably wants to take on a6. It's not useless to get rid of this pawn. It could open up your rook at some point, or it could allow your queen to hit this diagonal. I think queen a6 is good. I would take it. Your feeder rating dropped. Yeah, the knight's on c4 right now, so black has this checkmate threat. Rook g1, queen f3. Knight d6, I didn't calculate yet. It would go king here. Queen a7, I imagine. King here. Knight check, king here. I don't see the win. Knight d6, king d7, queen a7, king d8, knight f7. King e8, not c8, I think, yeah? If king e8 mate on e7? Okay, very good. That's it. Nice calculation. So MC gives us this clean line for Thomas. Knight check. Oh, this is actually Tom against Tom. Here, check. Oh, sorry. I'm hanging the queen now. We meant to go to a7 like before. King here, because the knight's covering those other squares, right? And then knight check. And if the king goes this way, mate from that bishop on a3. And if the king goes this way, then you bring out the next piece. So, looking very good for one of the Toms as they calculate a bunch here, which also looks good for them. Always a good look to be calculating seriously in a key moment. Very nice how the queen, knight, and bishop do this attack here. Very, very powerful. So, mistake for black was this queen d5 move, right? Very tempting here. But I had a feeling that it wouldn't be good to allow queen b4. And indeed, it is not. Position was not easy at all for black, though, here. Very hard to say exactly what they should have done. Wow. 3 minutes and 20 seconds. Let's applaud Tom Z for putting that kind of calculation effort into a rapid game, because there are moments every now and then that are worth that, right? In a 15-minute game, when you can smell blood, when you can feel it's the moment, you can do 3 or 4 minutes of calculation. Yeah, white has been down in exchange throughout us watching this game. And now it looks like they found the checkmate. It didn't feel like it. Fair enough. Time management is very hard anytime you switch any time control, I think. And if you play any time control long enough, it should improve. It's a thing that often gets better with some sort of subconscious adjusting. Sometimes you have to formally think about it and troubleshoot your time management. Like tell yourself, wait, how much time do I need to keep for endgames? Or what's the longest I can think on a move that is not, a decisive calculation, stuff like that. All right, so congrats to Tom. Pulls that one off. Now sitting in first place in the tournament with 3 out of 3, by the way. Tom Z 95, and we saw a couple of their wins so far. We've got a very active battle here for the top spots in this tournament. And anyone who wants to join, the beauty of these arenas is that whenever you get here, you can join and you can play 1 game or you can play 10. It's whatever you feel like. So, well, yeah, no best for the jury. So far, we've seen Tom Z needing sort of comebacks, so to speak, in their games, playing not great openings, but great middle games. That's what we've seen so far from Tom Z today. Here, do we have Majestic Waterfall finally on stream? Yes, Majestic Waterfall playing what looks to be a C3 Sicilian. C3 Sicilian confirmed, also known as the Alapin or Alapin. I think we may have seen bits of all 3 of Tom Z's wins, actually, no best for the jury. One, we just saw the very beginning. It was an E6, G6 Sicilian, where white played D4 and could have basically won the game with knight B5, knight D6. But Tom Z was on the black side of that one and landed that move Queen A5 and knight takes D4, coming out up a piece. And then after the queens traded, we stopped watching that game and moved on. All right, so on this board, we get bishop b5 check, preparing to keep this knight wherever it goes from pressuring d4. The move I see more often in my own practice is bishop e2. I've had people play that against me quite a lot here. But bishop b5 looks okay. I tend to value white's light square bishop a lot, so I'm not looking to trade it for the knight, but you know. How long are we going to stream, Beat Bong Head? In theory, my idea is to stream for about 3 hours. But, because it gets to be late at night, sometimes I suddenly just crash and I say, sorry, folks, I'm exhausted. We're going to stop a few minutes early. If I feel like my commentary is getting really bad, or if the people in chat start telling me it's really bad and I'm so out of it that I don't even know, and chat's like, dude, cut it out, give it up. It's not going anywhere. Get some rest. Tomorrow might be better. Dramatic. Queen A4. Giving up on the king side to ramp up pressure on d7. But is d7 even that weak? There's a knight on f6. There's potential rook d8. What follow-up does white have? That does not look like a weak enough spot. And black takes away one of the defenders of d7 to win a pawn and go after the rook. So black is saying, I completely do not believe your concept of going after me here. I'm completely unscared, unfazed. So it is a slightly brave move from black. You don't need to capture that pawn that badly, but it came with a tempo on the rook on h1. You may lose a tempo at some point to knight d2, but it is nice to have a pawn in your pocket. It is pretty nice. E6, bishop e7, you just want to develop, I think. I realize the move I was thinking about before is terrible. Queen e4, very terrible, because it develops white's bishop, and then next move they get knight d2, and you keep moving your queen even more. All right, so g6 is black's choice in the actual game. They thought a minute on it, which is actually, to my mind, kind of prudent, because the position's nice for black, but you do have to figure out, how are we developing? Do we have any issues here? What are we doing with the queen? Where's white going? Do we try and fight white, or do we let them? There's a question of how much to maximize, right? Like, how hard do we fight white? Do we try to win a second pawn? Do we try to get an attack against their king? Do we just try to get ourselves castled and say we're already up a pawn, it's enough? Do we need to challenge this bishop with a6 and maybe rook d8? So there's definitely some options for black, and you don't want to just drift. White has the bishop pair, and you're only up one pawn. And I think I showed that there are moves that are bad enough that suddenly you'll start feeling like there's counterplay. Look, I'm moving my queen a whole bunch. They get castled. So now look, suddenly I'm well behind in development. They've got the bishop pair. They've got ideas of taking here. They've got the rook opposite my queen. I mean, at minimum, it's become very difficult to play. And worst case scenario, I've already lost the game for black or gotten into major real trouble. Right? In fact, I don't even see what my next move is for black once I bumble around like this. So it doesn't take much to drift in this position. Very, very important, I think, move here from black. The choice between g6, e6, and maybe whatever else they were thinking of. I think a6, rook d8 was maybe a third viable concept. Because rook d8 is a developing move to me. And challenging this bishop is reasonable. Oh, look at this move from white. Bishop here. They want to take and then take. Black feels forced to defend the knight in an extra way. And now white could even get the pawn back if they wanted to. Trades on f6. Black has to take with the e-pawn. Normally I would play knight d2 first. It's just a free development tempo, I'm a fiend for those, like many people. Pawn takes c5 was also an idea. Just grabbing that pawn. I don't know. This has gotten tricky. Maybe actually MC, you could even in this position play a6. And then after bishop g5 or bishop e3, either is plausible, you castle. You're right. At first I was worried, I'm really asking for bishop a6. It's a rapid game. I'm not as confident in complications, and I'm already up a pawn. But there is just simply queen b7, and there's no attack. So yeah, let white give you a piece if they want to. Meanwhile, if they retreat, you've castled a little bit faster than you could castle this way. And it's still a little complicated, because if you go this way, now you do have to worry about the fully open king. We also have to worry about pawn takes c5. I can't go to c6 because you trade queens and win the a pawn, and then I'm just down the bishop pair in the endgame. I do something like this. I'm still in line for c4 and other moves. It's not so easy. It's just not so easy for black, right? So it really feels like, yeah, black had to really think carefully between these moves. It was a very important moment. g6, bishop g5. Don't know how well this went for black just now. Bishop f6. Potentially, black could have taken by queen here to keep the pawn structure intact and get the queen out of the way of knight d2 so it won't win a tempo. Oh man, should have definitely played queen f6, I think, because you're just sitting here waiting to give your opponent a tempo. Now you could have gotten out of the way of that. Definitely should have gotten out of the way of that. Oh, but black's trying to give white a headache here. So white plays f3 to get castled. It's going to go queen check, rook f2 or something, but then you still can't castle because you're defending the rook. Definitely a bit messy. Checks from e6 instead. Okay. That might also prevent castling, but careful what you wish for. The white king being forced to leave e1 might be dramatically bad for black here. some risk of that. Let's see where we're at. Queen e6. White's thinking. It's gone completely messy. I really think we don't know who's better here or by how much. Tanner J, is that a word for being on drugs? Going crazy while on drugs? Sleep deprived or on drugs? Oof. That's too bad to hear. I hope that's not true, Tanner, and you're just trolling me up or something. But the streaming lifestyle can be unhealthy. I think I'm doing a pretty healthy version of it, but it certainly can be tough. Well, if what you're saying is true, it's quite sad. King d1 is played, so that still traps this rook, but the king is hoping with some extra moves to eventually have a real hiding place. This was an important move from Majestic Waterfall's perspective. You know, this way with the king, your rooks coordinate a little bit faster for attacking, but your king's just in this ragtag, crummy area for the rest of the game. King d1 to c2, King d1 to c2 is going to be slower, but the king will be happy over there. Fair enough, Tanner. It says it's your first time talking to us, you know, which, as you may know, dramatically increases the chances that you came in here to troll us versus somebody who, you know, I've talked to 50 times before and have a relationship with. But if you are here for a change in mood, you're very welcome, and I hope that we can provide a mood that suits you. We're watching our own viewers play 15-minute chess against each other in an arena. And we've got players all the way from 500 up to 2200s. There's the rook to the file. These pieces are definitely feeling pinned here on e7 and d7. It's a very tough moment. Oh, great. You don't have to apologize. You're very welcome either way. My instinct is that black's in bad shape. I think black is still ahead of pawn. My instinct is this is bad. Logically, the square that would help black the most would be queen on d6. She keeps those pieces defended in hopes of castling. But queen d6, white has knight e4. And that move should win the game, right? Because this knight's even dreaming of taking on f6, because the defenders of f6 are all, you know, pinned, as mentioned before. Okay, queen f5 got played. So that doesn't let the knight come hopping on you with tempo. And it does prevent king c2, which is another very nice thing about it. So this is the second most appealing move for black. The problem with this move is it doesn't defend these pieces. So black's not really threatening to castle or to move or do anything. One thing white could do would be maybe take the pawn on a7. Because if I were to play a move for black here, my next move would be a6 to resolve the tension. So queen a7, not because I really want that pawn, although, you know, I'm not complaining about capturing my opponent's pawns. But queen a7 maybe to prevent a6. What else is plausible for white here? It's a tricky move for white as well, this next one. Because So they can't... Oh, they found something pretty quick. They went for rook e4. So against a6, the plan is perhaps just to retreat the bishop into here. And crazily, Majestic Waterfall might be taking a page out of Dingley Wren's book and planning to self-pin that rook to try to win the game that way, getting out of the way of the other rook. Rook e4 is very creative. That's a good suggestion, Jason. I thought of that move too. Black has played a6, by the way. But here, this was a possibility too, right, Jason? And again, on this move, I think white would have played a6. Kicking that bishop. That's what I expected, at least. It's not clear what to do with it. So let's see the line from the game. Rook e4, a6 gets played. And we'll see if Waterfall has this intention or something else in mind. Yep. Well, Black's definitely got to do something about this threat. Rook e7 check, winning the queen. So probably the queen needs to move. So there is maybe, if you needed to, you could also calculate king f. Oh my goodness, Thomas played king f8. So the idea is rook takes, queen takes. But maybe white turns that on Black's head and calculates a move further and goes for this. Never too late, Courtney. Well, I mean, it might be too late for you. I don't know what schedule you're on. It's not too late for our tournament. Let's see what happens. White goes for rook e7, queen d3, rook d7. So Majestic Waterfall does not believe the opponent, calculates, grabs the extra piece. And now it's still hectic because this king is badly placed. But now white is the one up a piece and trying to defend their position and honor. I can imagine pawn takes pawn, a greedy move, connecting the rook with the defense, but winning a pawn as well. Yum. And then like queen c4, queen c2. Oh, here, Courtney. You should maybe save this link for yourself since you often come here via YouTube. Save this link for yourself. I don't know, bookmark it or memorize it or whatever it somehow. You can always find the chess.com tournaments through the club. Versus if I give you a direct link to the tournament, you can fish for one day. I give you that link to our club, you can fish for years. Stockfish. Do people remember there used to be a chess engine called Ribka? Also, it was very strong. It was the strongest at the time. I just learned that, maybe for the second time, but I think this time it's sticking. I just learned that means fish in Russian. So there's more than one like top chess engine that has the word fish in it. I think it comes from the fact that people used to call bad chess players fish, like potzers or whatever. It was a word for bad players. Yeah. Arriba. Fish is also a term for somebody who's not so good at poker. White's thinking a long time on this move. They did grab one pawn. Very nice. You see them starting to get into time trouble. It's not so comfortable being the one up material, but who can't move your king out of the way of your pieces or finish development, right? It's not so comfortable. Not pleasant for the peasant. And black wants to go, king f8 and finally get this rook out. Double rooks maybe, start doing evil things. That's tricky. White's like, I don't see how to get my pieces organized, so I'm just going to keep eating pawns. One on c5, second on b7. Said registration got cut off? That's weird. Let me try and give you a direct link to the tournament after all. Here you go, Courtney. Let me know if that link works for you. I apologize for the challenge here. My favorite line to play against the King's Gambit. I don't like to play against the King's Gambit gefilte fish. Period. I just don't like to play against it. I've only faced it maybe once in a tournament that I can remember. I checkmated my opponent in 19 moves and then tried to destroy the score sheet so that nobody would see it. Because I want to play the opening as white, not black. Yeah. What do I not like to see when I'm white? I can't. You're asking me to prepare people against me on stream here? To publicly prepare everyone in the world against me? It's already hard enough for me to play the King's Gambit in tournaments without me preparing my opponents for me, right? Come on. That's not even sporting. I'm already giving them a very good chance by playing the King's Gambit against them. I don't have to also give them the moves for black to play. That's right, Uncle Vinny. I somewhat recently made a video about that game, so it's up on the Dojo channel. That's right. Players on board too were audibly laughing at me during the game. Oh, yeah, it's one of the most fun games I've ever played. I'll give you a link real quick. There you go. Hey, Tomas, excellent performance tonight. Sí, muy bien, muy bien, muy bien. Que duermas bien y cuando te despertas, que te veas en el podium. ¿Sí? That's right, Gefilte Fish. They're asking for the Shipman game. All right, so interesting maneuver to try and cover with this rook. Rook comes around, fights the files. Other rook finally gets out. Finally! But white has 20 seconds left after finding this contortion. 20 seconds left to play the game. That's hard to do. That's hard to do. Two a.m. Oh, the pressure on the knight. Oh, no. I think white has to take the rooks for the queen. It's the only way, right? Ooh, white tries something else. Okay, they sack a pawn. You need to be comfortable sometimes taking all the pieces against the queen. You have to do it sometimes. What better time than now to practice doing it? Instead, white stays tied up for now. They're going to lose at least one more pawn here, maybe another one here. This game's not going to be as easy. And they allow rook d2! And Tom finds it! A knockout blow in time pressure. Oh! Oh, man, and the time trouble brings down Majestic Waterfall. And Tom, our brave 1200, playing up round after round today, becomes Tom, our brave 1300 with that huge win, and now goes up against a master. Ay, Tom, this is going to be tough. This is going to be tough. This is going to be tough. Tom's got the opening lined up. Blitzing out the first few moves. Comfortable here. I think the C is chess name 75. Let me check for you, Gefilte Fish. Chess name 75, yeah. I believe, no best for the jury, that that only one of the arenas held, so everybody has moved into one arena to all play with each other in there. I could try no vest, but it's gonna mess a lot of stuff up. What can I do? I'm not sure what I can do about it. I understand that it would be nice to have the usernames. All right, I'll try and mess around with it. Let's see what happens. The thing is, no vest. I don't have my other I don't have my other monitor here. I'm in the dining room. And my monitor's in my bedroom. And someone's sleeping in the bedroom. So I don't have much real estate. Like now, I made the thing so big to get a little bit more of the screen names, but it's blocking my YouTube chat. So now I can't read if anyone has questions or comments on YouTube. That's like the trade-off. But we did manage to get a little bit of the usernames into the picture. So at least we know it's possible. But it's really, my real estate here on the screen is not so good. Have I ever done 494 against this system? You mean like right here, knight takes e4? No, I have not. Oh, no, best for the jury. I'm not talking about the space on the OBS. You can widen the thing all you want. It won't show you. It won't eat up my left to right space in this thing here. It's sound gefilte fish? Well, then I should definitely be doing it. This is the main line. This is what I've always played as black, by the way. This thing that Chess Name is playing. This was, in theory, the main line when I was young, and it's what I learned and played the 2 or 3 times I actually got this. Whoa! Tad! I haven't seen you in a long time. How are you doing? So white plays h3, keeping the bishop off of g4. Tom seems to know this opening quite well. You know, ahead on the clock against a master here. I don't know, Novest. I don't know what to say. I could jimmy around. I don't have screen space on my laptop to do much. I don't know what to do. I mean, like right now, my window is taking up 80% of my little laptop screen. I could try all kinds of stuff, but do you want me to spend all my time fighting my window or talking about the chess position? You got a job and dropped 300 elo. Wow. So you seem to think that's bad news. You'd rather be unemployed and 300 elo higher. Oh, look at this interesting pawn sack. / not pawn sack, right? Like tactic, maybe. Chess Name allows rook takes b7, hits queen c8 off of it, and then when the rook moves, they're looking to recapture the pawn over there. I obviously don't have the skill to be able to precisely answer why I can't do this better, Novest. I could try zooming in or out in the browser window, would get me different displays. I could try different shapes of the browser window. It would just be like a whole effort, right? I'm not sure how successful I would be. I was able to get a few more letters added here at the cost of, you know, a large amount of my screen real estate. I don't know if it has to show the piece numbers or the ratings or the clock. I don't know what all the options might be. Okay, so who's favored by this pawn trade? I would say mildly black, because I think white's king safety is a little bit suspect now. And to me, that's even more important than the busting up of the pawn structure, is that this is kind of a real factor in this position. Was there no way black could have maybe played e4? Like, what would happen if black played e4 in advance to open up this bishop? It's supported by the rook. The knight would come here and defend this while attacking this. Yeah. But here, this move would have been very logical, because normally white plays d3 or d4 much earlier. e4, opening up the bishop. Kicking the knight when it doesn't have, like, amazing moves. I guess it has an okay move over here. So that's playable, yeah, but not clearly better for black or anything. Okay. So black gets this pawn trade. White plays d3 to stop e4. Black's got another think here. There's a few options. You could maneuver this knight towards the king side, right? Like knight e7, knight f5, something like that. You could play rook a d8, or you could just play e4, trading the pawn to open up the rooks. You could play f5, trying to bully white for space on the king side. So a few candidate moves, maybe even rook e6, although you don't have rook h6. So rook e6, maybe not the best. I feel like rook a d8 is kind of like a rapid or blitz move. Just, oh, and then we get it. Just kind of improving that rook, making white figure out where their queen should be. The e-file has its own issues as well, right? So looking for a favorable moment to maybe break with e4. Rook e6 was also blundering knight g5. Thank you, Noves, for the jury. So that move is out, 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 out. Hopefully, Amal James, you will get paired soon enough. There are people in the arena and games being played, so. Got Mudla has joined us. Great to see Mudla. Gombach. And what, an hour and 20 still to go on the arena. So knight g5 from white, hitting the queen, trying to work against e4. Queen retreats all the way. Well, white's happy to see that queen get out of the way and bring out their own queen. That'll cover the king side. Nice. Hey, white. Incredible. Bounces right back into the position here against the master. And white's actually threatening bishop takes h6 because of the weakness at f6. Queen's pretty decent. Knight's pretty decent. Bishop's okay where it is. Rook's got a file. All around, white has a real position here. Man, it felt for a moment like black was taking over the game, and no such luck, and white keeping up on the clock and the board here. I mean, I don't know if Tom has ever played a master before. You know, for a player rated 12, 1300, sometimes you've never played a master. I played a master. Well, did I sometimes spar with my coach? A little bit, maybe. But other than my own coach, I don't know that I played any other master until I was 2000 myself. All right, rook e6, nice moves, covering this f6 square. And now, you know, big question to white, what do they want to do? The rook on b3, it is on an open file, but it's kind of disconnected from the other pieces. So how well placed is that? What do we want to do with the rook on f1? Should it go to e1? Is that a little bit of an improvement? Probably, but, you know, we could think a little more generally about what else do we want to do and how do things fit together. King g2, rook h1, I don't get a powerful feeling from that. Is possible, but somehow it's not overwhelming me. I'd like to play c4, c5, but c4, knight d4 with a tempo on my rook, and then the knight looking at, all these squares here, which are all a little bit weak. I don't feel like I can do that right now. Maybe bishop e3, so that if knight d4, I could take it, and then I could start pushing for c4, and my bishop would be looking at a7. Maybe that's an alternative to rook e1. Bishop a3 played in the game. Looking to just make a trade. Make a trade. The problem is white's not really wanting to take on d6, because then black plays c takes d6, turning the mediocre c pawn into a pretty good d pawn. You think instead of rook e6, f5? I was definitely considering it. It's a move. I think it's a fine move, gefilte fish. Which white could have played. Whoa, tactics. Whoa, tactics. Okay. If the rook moves, the bishop will be hanging. If white takes on d6, black wants to take on b3. Uh-oh. Knight a3 might have been a loose move. You got to stay so alert when you play chess, right? Any moment. You don't know which moment could be a potential blunder, right? Goes for bishop d6. We'll see knight b3, I think. And then if I were white, maybe try to grab one pawn for the exchange that we're losing. Oh, tries to trap the knight. Holy moly, claiming black has miscalculated. Of course, black does have moves like c5 and a5, which will save the knight. Probably. But lose a pawn. And you know what's crazy? I mean, white could, in fact, have gone even something like bishop a3, and then if you extricate the knight, knight c5, regaining the exchange. So things are not at all clear here in this tactical sequence initiated by ChessName. This bishop can drop back to a3 here, or white could take on b3, and then when you take on b4, play knight c5. White takes by bishop, knight retreats, bishop b4, knight b7 covers knight c5. So white gets a pawn, but that was maybe not maximum. What if white had just dropped back? Black have queen a4. I guess. Wow. Wow. Oh, gefilte fish. That's unreal. What a threat. Oh, that is... How did you see that? How did you see that? You're really paying attention. You've got the brain turned on. That's like a classic, hard to find sort of single move kind of thing. It would make a great tactical puzzle, honestly, because it's not about calculating 6 moves ahead, right? It's just about seeing like sneaky elements. Plus, in this position, you're distracted by the threats here, right? Like basically, we're looking at a3, b3, c5 would be normal here, right? Goodness. That's a shocking move. Queen h4. Is there any defense to it? No. Probably not. g5. Knight f6. f6. Knight f6. Rook d4. Pawn takes rook. Doesn't it feel like there would be a way out of queen h4? Like black would have some amazing defense? My instincts are telling me there's some amazing defense. but I can't find it. It might even be enough just to do this. And really play down an exchange. Although we still have some work to do to get this guy into the game after something like this. Okay, so I'm just going to go queen here. Queen a3. Knight g5. Rook here. Huh. Fascinating. Fascinating. What a situation. Me too, Stigma. So let's see the continued adventures of Tom against the master. Knight on b7, still on its back foot, and black opens up the bishop with e4. That's a very aggressively timed move. Doesn't feel so amazingly good. White has a number of interesting moves here. Rook d1, rook e1, and knight d4. All popping into mind. You want to see if Tom is a real 1300? Let's have a look. They joined over a year ago. They're 1800 in Blitz. So this is the 1200 and 2100 in Bullet. So this might be the 1200 who pre-tournament told us, I'm 1200, but really I'm like 1600 plus. So they're not a real 1300. Nevertheless, you know, I mean, they're not a master, so they're facing a very strong opponent here. Probably they've played less rapid, no best for the jury. But it's also possible that they're a real like speed specialist and they're a bit less good at rapid. Or it could be a mix of the two. Because I noticed their Bullet was 2100 and Blitz was 1800, right? So they're, I mean, I know it's different rating pools, but potentially, and I don't play enough Bullet to know, but potentially they're quite a bit better at Bullet than Blitz, which means they might be really better and better the faster it is and worse the slower it is. So they might be worse in rapid than they are in Blitz, right? Since they're worse in Blitz than Bullet. Not sure if their ratings are provisional. You want to see like full stats on our friend Tom here. They've played 21 Bullet games and gone down 14 rating points in the last 3 months. It's not that many games. And then like the Blitz. Blitz, they've played 60 games. So I don't know if there were any cheaters last week. D4. Oh, looking for like 2 running passers together. But kind of blocking both these minor pieces for a moment. Yikes. The pawn on F3. That's a recipe for mate coming in. And white's already preparing against queen h3 to simply take on f3. Oh, because of the rook. Okay, it's not a piece sack. Hi, Courtney. It looks like mate is coming. Allowing that pawn to f3 looked... Some of the tournaments were canceled, Courtney. This is the one that we had to all join. This one here, the Arena 4496399. You know what's crazy, guys? I've been playing a ton of Blitz over the last couple months. And today I got a message from chess.com, you know, one of your opponents cheated and they refunded rating points to me. And I thought, wow, I haven't even been thinking about the possibility that anyone was cheating. It was completely out of my mind. White does resign here because that was checkmate coming in. Let's see what that final position was, folks, right? Yeah, white resigned here, unable to stop the mate. I realized I'd completely forgotten about the whole possibility that people were cheating. I wasn't suspecting anyone. It never even occurred to me. Even the game I'd lost to the cheater, it had never occurred to me that they might be cheating during that game. Although once chess.com flagged and I looked at the game, I realized, oh yeah, that is very plausible because I had like 0 chances in that entire game. But I've played like 1,000,000 games with like nobody cheating against me. And people always say that there's lots of cheaters. Don't they? And, whoops. Don't they always say that there's lots of cheaters and people are always worrying about it? I can't use my screen because I made it bigger for... because I made this window so huge. Ugh. I can't even see my stuff. Nope, not that. Ugh. So Blitz. I've played 150 games. 150 games. And only one cheat. 150 Blitz games. That's incredible, right? People are always worried. It's like, oh, everybody's cheating. Everybody's cheating. And because I wasn't worrying about people cheating, I wasn't like, I wasn't tormented in 10 other games where people weren't cheating because I wasn't worrying like, oh, they're playing good moves. They must be cheating me or something. I just totally even forgot that there were cheaters out there. It was really great. I will say this, no best for the dreary. I played very badly the day that I played that cheater relative to other days. So I will say that. I didn't think that they were cheating, right? But I got beaten so badly, and they had like a lower-ish rating, right? They were rated like 2390, and I'm in the 2500s now. So I got beaten like absolutely hopelessly by this player, and I think it hurt my confidence a little bit. I didn't think at all about cheating, but I thought about like, oh, I'm not, I felt like, oh, maybe I'm not so good today, or I'm not so good, period, or something like that, right? So I think I lost some of my confidence, and I played badly the rest of that day in general, played like a little bit below my normal level. So it did hurt me some, like it took away some of my confidence, made me play worse that day, made me enjoy those games a little bit less. But I wasn't truly tormented. I wasn't truly tormented the way I think a lot of people are when they're worrying about, oh, this guy might be cheating, this girl might be cheating, blah, 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 right? I wasn't really tormented. We just had an interesting exchange stack from AC Secret, so let's look at this here. I just thought that would be like a nice little public service message about cheating, right? Like, it's actually maybe not so prominent, and if we stop thinking about it, it's even less prominent. But if you look at this, black is up a pawn, and then they go after white's king with queen h2 threatened, and you can see you have to be very careful about your diagonals on the king side as white. And white says, I'll just give you an exchange to change the flow in the course of the game, right? Make some threats against h7 suddenly. These attacking pieces, if there aren't enough attacking pieces, they're not really attacking. And if you're defending, it's no use to have a couple of attacking pieces, so to speak, right? Black goes queen c5. Counterattack here. Maybe queen h4 could be the move. White goes queen h4. We'd expect h6. It shouldn't be enough for white. Of course, it shouldn't be enough, but it might be a good example of sort of like changing the flow of a game. Maybe black would just get the rooks to the f file and take over just fine anyway. Busy trying to play good chess. That's what I've been doing lately, Gefilte Fish. I think I've been very focused during my blitz games, and for the most part, really enjoying them. And maybe that's part of why I just totally forgot about cheating. I see what you mean, no best for the jury. You're calibrated for other time controls, and so you don't know what's the practical difficulty, how much clock pressure is it putting on my opponent, right? Like, is this going to create blunders or mistakes or not? Is it going to, hard to know. So here come British Capital's games. Rooks to the king side. Rook f6, making way for rook a8. I guess this exchange stack's not going to do enough, huh? A couple people were talking about it, Prime Numeru. Yeah. And welcome to the dojo to you, Prime. Rook f6. Yeah, and all the black pieces get into the game, and hard to find a good spot for white here, because on top of it all, this knight's not very good on h3 now, is it? Rook d1, yeah, improving the rook. Of course, it's better on e1 or d1, so some threat to d7. Black just ignores it, says against rook d7, we're going to have rook f2 with sort of devastating. No, it's covered enough times. What is the plan against rook d7? I see a funny move against rook d7, which is queen e3, going for back rank mate stuff, but white could just come back with their pawn. So did white miscount? I mean, did black miscount f2? Rook f2, knight f2, rook d7. What's the plan? The pawn sort of looks hanging on d7, no? a little bit hanging. Kind of hanging, definitely hanging. I'm going to go switch my ice pack 1 second. Just put this back in the freezer. You've seen me commentate for ChessCon before. Yes, Prime Numberu. I mean, rarely in recent memory. Rook d2, Queen c6. Oh, was that the trick? Rook here. Either Queen c6 or Bishop g2. Right? Threatening that mate. Rook d2, Queen c6. A little weakening, but at least it blocks every black piece. That one pawn at f3. Black can probably win with Rook f3 because it's that one pawn. Oh, British Capital Games is on his game. That is some power. Whew. But Prime Numberu, I did a lot more commentary on chess.com like 15 years ago than like this year or last year. So I don't know, you might have seen me on there, but I commentated the qualifiers for the freestyle Fisher Random Chess events at the beginning of this year. I think that's the only thing I've done on chess.com pretty much. Oh, and I did the Coach Champs show. How was the Coach Champs experience? No best for the jury. I still love Coach Champs idea. My personal experience, one of my 4 students didn't want to do lessons. So I couldn't really win the competition, and there's a part of me that was upset about that. The 3 students who did want to take lessons with me, I enjoyed working with, and I think it went well. I'm still teaching them now, even though Coach Champs is over. I promised them that after I prepared them for Coach Champs, that the next month I would prepare them for continuing to improve at chess. So I'm doing that now, and I enjoy them, and that's worth doing and fun to do. Why did they not want to do lessons? I don't know. They just declined/refused, and then I had no chance. And I wasn't the only one, apparently. When I complained mildly to the organizers, they said that it had happened to one of the other coaches as well. So were they already pretty good? No. No. Wine lovers should ever play at 1 a.m. Yeah, I don't know, Courtney. I'm not a wine lover, so I don't know for sure, but it's hard to play late. It's probably hard to play whatever under the influence of anything. So it's an extra challenge. I think the important thing is whether or not you're enjoying playing, whether or not you play to your normal standards, or maybe you just need to sleep. It depends. Maybe they assumed they had to pay. They should have known the rules. I mean, I didn't make anybody pay, obviously. E5. Gombak breaks bravely in the center despite the bishop on b2. Right. That is the point of the show, indeed. But there was some stuff that was really fun and interesting and gratifying about the experience, for sure. I mean, I really wanted to win the thing, obviously, right? I wanted to prove that I was a good coach and that my methods were good. And if the other coaches were even better than me, I was open to that, but I wanted to have a chance to do my best. And then if somebody else beats me somehow, I want to learn what they did and why and how it was better than what I did. But I felt like I had no real chance to do that. I'm still really looking forward to hearing the comments of the other coaches eventually, like hearing what they thought and what they were doing and stuff like that, and comparing their methods. But I felt a little bit robbed of my chance to properly compete. How long was it? It was 4 weeks long, the competition. Too short to do very much, according to my theory, but I'm curious if other coaches thought that they were able to achieve a lot in 4 weeks. I basically just prepared my players for the tournament instead of trying to make them better at chess. I just tried to get them ready for one single competition. So now I'm making it up to them by spending a month giving them advice on how to keep getting better at chess. The bishop is looking at e5. White wants to win something with moves like knight takes d5 or knight b5, but black can always trade off this knight with check on one of these squares, right? And if you trade first, now you can't play meaningful discoveries, or it doesn't look like you can, because your bishop's undefended. I mean, you could go knight a4 defending your bishop, and after they move the queen away, what's your knight doing on a4? You know? Okay, sorry. So here's the live position. Okay, sorry. No best for the jury. I missed one of your questions, I guess. Sorry. Bob says they mostly followed Cash. Enjoyed watching the interaction and grind. Yeah, Cash was good. And then no best for the jury is how much is success as coach champs based on the coaching methods versus the student's work ethic, or even just the time available to the student, right? Like Cash has a great work ethic, no best for the jury, but Cash had less time available than Francisco or Martin, my two other students, right? Okay, B Bonghead, I think, is asking about this position here, and then knight d5 with the idea of queen b2, knight e7 check. Specifically against knight d5, black's going to take the knight instead of the bishop, emerging with an extra piece for black. So like Cash and I, we did 3 hours of lessons together a week, approximately. Whereas with Francisco and Martin, I probably did 8 hours of lessons a week with them. You know, and that's not because Cash has less work ethic. It's because Cash had a full-time job and his time zone hours didn't line up with mine as well. Such that like he was really free to work on chess in his evenings, which was when my kids were home. Because he was in the US like me, just like 2 hours ahead of me. So we could do 2 hours or an hour and a half pretty much after he got off work before my kids got off school. Then once my kids were home, you know, and by the time my kids went to bed, even though there's a 2 hour difference, or by the time my kids went to bed, because there's a 2 hour difference, you know, he was wrapping up for the night. So we couldn't put in as many just raw hours as I could with the others. That said, I told him how to spend his time, and he, you know, grinded what he could on his own as well, obviously in the evenings and stuff. But I think with one of the things I said, you know, I did a whole podcast on this. No best for the dreary, if you want to get into more detail about it or not. But I was a guest on a podcast that just got published today, and I can find you the link, I think, to John's podcast. me find this. See if this is right. That might be the link to the full thing. But one of the things we talked about on this podcast is that I think when you have 3.5 weeks to coach the students, the drafting part of the coaching is almost more important than the coaching part. In other words, if you pick the right students at the beginning of the month, even if you don't coach them very well, your picks of who to take at the beginning, which is kind of a coaching skill, so to speak, or coaching adjacent skill, right? But who you pick is going to be more important almost than what you do with them. And do you want me to verify that link for you first, Flaga Filterfish? I can click on it first and see if it's right.
I've seen plenty of power banks over my 15 years of reviewing.
Yeah, it's right.
This Ridge one could...
That's the real link. I've confirmed it for you. So there's also the element that there was a pretty big spread in some of the players, right? So within a 12 to 1600 group, there were some players who were literally like 1205, and there were some players who were crossing 1600. So that's a 400 point gap. There was also one player in the 12 to 1600 group who was like 1580 or whatever in rapid, but she was like 1900 in bullet and blitz. And so she just hadn't played as much rapid. And, you know, within 2 or 3 weeks, she was 1800 in rapid from practicing some rapid games, but she was already that good to begin with. It's not that she gained 300 points of strength during the tournament. So she was 670 points stronger from the outset than one of her competitors. There's nothing you do in 3 weeks of coaching that's going to have any kind of impact on that scale, right? And it doesn't even have to be that big to make the point. If you've got a player who's 1200 and another player who's 1400, there's no amount of coaching you can do in 3 weeks that makes up that gap. Like even 200 points, it's like ridiculous, right? So who you draft, when there's a big variety in the players, who you draft is going to be much more important than how you coach them with a very short coaching time. If you give somebody a year, then maybe the 1200 versus 1400 doesn't matter as much, and you could outcoach somebody. Also, if all the players were within like 100 rating points of each other, like every player is between 1300 and 1399, then it doesn't matter as much who you draft, and the coaching is going to have more of an impact. But when you've got a spread of players that was between 400 and 700 points in some of the sections, then who you pick, I believe, had the biggest effect on who won the event more than the coaching. Now, I'm still waiting to hear what other people think, and I might be totally wrong. That's just thinking on my own without other people's input. That was my thought on that subject as far as what had the most impact on, you know, who won or lost or whatever, how people did in Coach Champs. All right, let's follow this game some more. I mean, I don't mind talking about Coach Champs. We don't have to look at games nonstop. Knight e4. I think they could have made the event run longer, no best for the jury. I don't know a very strong reason why they couldn't have made it run longer. I don't think it was costing them more money or anything. It would be more a question of would the coaches be willing to do it that long, right? That's what Dr. John told me. I hadn't thought of that myself because I wanted to do it longer, so I would have. But Dr. Jan pointed out to me that John pointed out to me that some of the coaches might not have been willing to coach for 3 months or 4 months, right? So that could have been a problem with making it longer. So did the 1800 plus blitz player win the whole tournament? Actually, no best for the jury. She didn't. I had a very good player in that group who was just around 1600 level strength. So he was like within striking distance of her. and we prepared for her. He played the King's Gambit for the first time in his life. He beat her, and he ended up winning that section. So it wasn't 100% guaranteed that she would win the section just because she was the best, but it was like 100% guaranteed she would finish ahead of the 1200, right? Like, and there was another section which was the under 1200 section, and there they had one player who was 1650 in blitz, and he won the tournament easily. 6.5 out of 7. Like, he was just no chance. It was a very, very narrow path for my student to win that 12 to 1600 group, but he had a chance. He was one of the top 3, and he had a fair chance. Chess.com wasn't paying the coaches like per hour for coaching. They were paying us via the prize fund at the end, which is another potential problem with the competition being unfair, is like if you are really relying on the prize and then you have no chance to win, somebody might really be frustrated about that. I probably did about 80, 90 hours of coaching and got $1,500 for it. So, $15 to $20 an hour, which is not amazing because I finished badly, which I would argue was not really my fault, but I'm not here to get into complaining and stuff. I don't believe there was a prize for whose students gained the most rating, no. And even that no best for the jury would have been tricky to arbitrate, right? Because the person whose students gained the most rating point was the person with the 1500 whose blitz and bullet were like 1900, 2000. Even though she didn't win the tournament against players lower rated than herself, she gained the most rating points because she finally played a few rapid games, right? And she gained 300 points. Hey, Ifemuyiwa, that's a very good question that applies to a lot of people. So one thing is, there's two different directions you can go on that, right? One is you can try and figure out like what your problems are, right? What are the things that are making you not like chess or hate chess or feel bad when playing chess? You can figure out what some of those things are and try and get rid of them or fix them. The other thing you can do is you can try and remember the things that made you love chess and like return to those roots, right? So you think about things like, where were you playing chess when you enjoyed it? Under what conditions? Against, what kind of opponents? Was it blitz? Was it bug house? Was it with your friends? Was it with strangers? Was it in a park? Was it in a tournament, right? You try and remember, like, what did you really love? Go back and look at some of the best games you played that you enjoyed and try and recapture anything you can of that. So those are kind of like the two different tacks you can take, right? So I've got a video about trying to deal with like, the hate and the tilt and the negative stuff. Let's see if I can find it for you real quick. This is one of the two things you can do. And to me, it's like the most important chess video I've made. So there you go. That's a link to it. So that's about figuring out the things that are causing it to be painful for you and trying to, make some attitude adjustments for yourself to not feel that kind of pain. And then the other thing I don't yet have a full video about, but hopefully just the 2 or 3 sentence overview of it, you got the idea of how to like think back to what did you love, what did you like, and try and rekindle it, right? For me, an example would be, it was inviting my friends over to eat watermelon and play blitz chess. Or it was reading Mikhail Tal's book, My Life in Games, right? Like some great moments like that. I can go back and reread that book, or I can call up my friends from 20 years ago and say, hey, let's get together and play blitz in the park nearby, or something like that, right? So go back to some roots and some happy memories. Wow, that's 200 points. That's great, Noves, for the jury. But you started out underrated, right? So, yeah. You can see it's tricky to judge the rating improvement when you've got people who come in potentially really underrated or overrated or whatever. Again, you could maybe do a bunch of scouting and deal with it. We only had between 1 and 3 days to scout the players. So it wasn't a lot. Black has some compensation. They've sacked a pawn. It feels like a rook lift could maybe be damaging, but I guess White's thinking knight g3 will cover it. So Black goes to the d file. White's going to want to trade a rook here. And Black was worrying about knight f4 now, so they make a way out for that piece. But now this guy's committed. That's a very interesting position for sure. Basically, in advance, chess.com had told us that we couldn't look at the players' profiles. So we're like, well, how are we going to pick players? They're just going to give us like a list of like names and ratings on the day of, and we're just going to pick by that little information. That was the original plan, which made no sense to me. And then 3 days before the event, they sent us an email. They sent us an information sheet with various information about like round times and scheduling and this and that, and included in it was a list of all the players' chess.com profiles. But they'd previously told us that we weren't allowed to look at the players' profiles. So I sent them an email saying, you just sent us the profiles. Was that on purpose or not? Are we allowed to look at them or not? I didn't want to look at them if I wasn't allowed to look at them. And then I waited 2 days to hear back. And 1 day before the draft, they wrote back to me and said, yes, you're allowed to look at the profiles. We realized without looking at the profiles, you would have nothing on which to base your draft. So then I only had 1 day left, which was not enough time to thoroughly look at 32 profiles, right? But I did what I could. I don't know. I probably spent like 8 hours on that last day looking at profiles, and I got, a good start on it, but I would have gone deeper with more time, of course. And I don't know what other competitors' experiences of that were, but I'm sure a mix of my experience. Probably like a couple of them just looked at it immediately or got an answer faster, or some of them maybe looked at it even less than me. I don't know. Interesting, this rook trade on d6. That pawn, it could be stronger. It could get lost. I mean, it's really far ahead of these pieces, and the area around it is closed, so it's not easy to get up and support it. Really tough game here. A lot of the players, I didn't even play through their games based on the time limitations, Like I looked, how many games have they played in the last month, in the last 3 months? Like, are they active? Do they have time to work on the game or to follow my coaching kind of. But I didn't get to look what kind of like strengths and weaknesses do they have, who has the kind of weaknesses that are easier to fix or not. I wasn't able to do that in every example. So here, rook d1, and white gets the rook off of e4, which means, we can finally do this. Even that's not the end of the world for black because they can still light square blockade, but at least this pawn is basically defended now. It's not going to be lost. Bishop tempos the knight. Knight should be fine heading to f5, I feel like. That makes sense as well, Bob. You could look up some of their best wins and see what their potential is, depending on how much time you have to unlock it. With a very, very short competition of like 3.5, 4 weeks, my thought is the best thing to see is like if they've got 1 or 2 really big weaknesses that are quickly fixable. Basically like the low-hanging fruit of coaching. Because you assume that the player's like strengths and weaknesses kind of average out to their rating generally. So if they've got some really glaring weakness, you have to think if you fix that, their new average will be like better, right? Their potential matters more if you're talking like several months and you've got more time to like build them up, right? I also did want to know how old they were, Noves for the jury, and then go with, younger players if possible, but I couldn't even find that information for most of them. The profiles didn't say it, and we had no access to that info. Maybe that's a slightly lame and negative approach on my part, Bob, right? To think in terms of like just trying to fix 1 or 2 weaknesses and not get too excited about the long-term potential. Maybe the long-term potential is another way of figuring out, who would be a good pick and whose average level can go up. But I'm also curious, like, what their weakness is, because that's probably what I'm going to be fixing, right? Versus, like, you find what they're strongest at. If I find what their weakness is, it tells me, like, am I good or not at fixing that weakness? How long does it normally take to fix that weakness? Stuff like that. It, like, plays into my whole coaching strategy based on what I know about my own coaching. Maybe white didn't want to go knight g3, even just because of bishop takes g3 with opposite colored bishops. There's that king coming in on the light squares, but tactic. Black didn't pay attention to the tactic, did they? Rook d4. That's game. I mean, just a full piece. Yeah, and black resigns. Just like I'm always closes my games before I can go over the point of what was just going on. Okay, so I just want to show that right here, if black plays king e6 without trading, then rook d4 is not as powerful, right? And, oh no, it is. It still works because of here. Oh, yay. Oh, man. But this was definitely just hasty coming like this. But this bishop on h4 had become a problem, right? It can't retreat. White's going to harass it with tactics this way, weirdly. Knight c3 was not intuitive to me, but it stops bishop d5. And then black couldn't sort out the bishop pair, weirdly enough. Interesting. No, we didn't get rated prime numero. I think we're probably just getting hosted on some pages on chess.com, and they're not real viewers. B. Bonghead, how much emphasis I put on the openings? I put very little emphasis on the openings with my students. In other words, I didn't want them thinking that the openings mattered too much and putting too much emphasis on the openings themselves. Okay? I didn't want them worrying a lot about their openings. Like bots, yeah, I think. Well, I mean, they're not bots, but they're like people who are on a chess.com page. And then somewhere in the corner of their chess.com page, our stream is open somehow. But in terms of the openings, I did some extensive opening prep for some of my students' opponents, but I did it outside of the lesson time and then just told them like play this opening or play that opening mainly.